I want to kick off though with our first company, late stage drug development company, Paradigm Biopharma. Now it's probably best known for its work on conditions like osteoarthritis. Paul Rennie is the Managing Director and joins us now in studio. Paul, great to have you with us.
Well, thanks, Kylie.
Thanks for coming in.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, you've got your presentation, so away you go, and I'll ask you a few questions off the back of that soon.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for everyone who's tuned into the presentation. I'll start off with our standard disclaimer. We are an ASX listed company, and there's every likelihood that there will be forward-looking statements made throughout the presentation. Now, with the presentation, Kylie, I'm not going to go through and read point by point. I'm going to try and leave the audience with some key messages from each slide. So this key message from this slide is that Paradigm is now active in a phase 3 clinical study. So in terms of pharmaceutical development, there are the three major stages: safety in phase 1, safety and efficacy in phase 2, and then enlarged safety and efficacy in stage 3. And then it's on to registration. So Paradigm has commenced its phase 3 program. So that is official. And we also have announced that we raised some capital to ensure that we could get through to some very significant milestones in a phase 3 trial. The milestones are 100% of patients recruited into the trial, and also we are introducing an interim analysis into the phase 3 trial design, so that in around about 12 months we should have a very clear indication as to the probability of success of the trial. So that's a major value inflection point for all of us to look forward to. Now, I just want to touch on a little bit about what we are working in, which is within the orthopaedic space, particularly moderate to severe osteoarthritis. And I'd like to explain to people that osteoarthritis was once considered to be a wear and tear type of disease. These days, with very modern biotechnology, we are able to understand that there are active disease processes underway, and the disease leads to a breakdown of the entire structure of the joint. So we see the synovial capsule, which encases the joint and holds the fluid for the lubrication of the joint. That changes significantly during osteoarthritis. We see other tissues degrading, like ligaments, tendons, and also cartilage. We see there's major changes to the bone under the cartilage, known as the subchondral bone, and those changes result in a lot of the symptoms that are related to osteoarthritis. The major symptoms in osteoarthritis are pain and joint stiffness. So we know that at the current stage of where we are today, 2025, we're still using many drugs that were designed over many, many years ago to treat pain, being analgesics and also anti-inflammatories. And those drugs today continue to be the major treatment options for doctors. But what we are seeing with this particular drug is that we may now be able to go to the next stage and be able to not only treat pain and joint stiffness, but also start treating and looking at maybe slowing down the disease process so the joint doesn't degrade as quickly as it will without any treatment. So the take home for this particular slide is that we do have a huge amount of data behind us. We have safety and efficacy from multiple phase 2 studies. We also have real world evidence, patients who are not participating in a trial but their doctor feels that this drug could be beneficial, can approach the TGA under the special access scheme and be treated with the drug. We have many studies looking at the mechanism of how this drug works in osteoarthritis and how the drug is able to improve those structures of the joint. And through all of that information, we've been able to come up with a very optimised phase 3 trial design. Now, osteoarthritis affects a lot of people, somewhere in the region of 10 to 15% of the population. So we know that in 2030 there'll be, in the United States, Canada, UK and also EU5, there'll be somewhere in the region of 120 million people clinically diagnosed with osteoarthritis. It's a very large market. And on the right-hand side of the panel, you can see two key statistics. 69% of subjects will have osteoarthritis in the knee and the hip, and 81% of subjects are largely dissatisfied with their current medications. The reason for that is that the current medications are generally analgesics such as paracetamol or anti-inflammatories, over-the-counter anti-inflammatories and prescription anti-inflammatories, and these drugs do reduce the inflammation, but they don't preserve the tissues within the joint, and largely as the disease progresses, those drugs don't keep pace with the disease, and those drugs are generally ineffective as the disease progresses into the moderate to severe stage of osteoarthritis. Now, this is a busy slide. I won't go through all of the details, but suffice to say the take-home message here is that Paradigm has undertaken a number of studies in relation to this drug, pentosan polysulfate sodium. And over the years, we have ourselves sponsored 3 phase 2 studies. We also have the data from a study done in Japan by Kenji Kumagai, and also a study done here in Sydney by Peter Ghosh. So all of these data have been mined through by our biometrics team and have really come up with an optimised phase 3 trial design. A lot of data, but most importantly, we see a very consistent response to patients with moderate to severe osteoarthritis through these phase 2 trials. So consistency is very important when you're going into a phase 3 study. You want to be able to make sure that you have a drug that is performing consistently, and you're not seeing little effect in one study and significant effect in another study. We see a constant response in our studies. As I mentioned at the outset, we are now a phase 3 company. We have commenced the pivotal phase 3 trial. Phase 3 trial has a primary objective to evaluate this drug, PPS, in the treatment of knee pain in participants with knee OA symptoms. We have secondary objectives. These are to look at the function, so the joint stiffness, to also evaluate the effect of the drug on PGIC, which is a very important patient-reported outcome, and also to evaluate the efficacy of the drug, function, stiffness, and overall knee pain. So we have quite significant primary objectives, secondary objectives, also looking at imaging. So we're taking X-rays at baseline, and again at 12 months. We're taking MRIs at baseline, again at 6 months. So we'll have a lot of data. We're also taking serum samples to measure biomarkers throughout the study as well. So it's a very comprehensive study. Now showing a schematic of the phase 3 trial design. As you can see, it's a total of 466 subjects randomised into 2 arms, treatment arm and placebo arm, the placebo being saline. You can see that as the patient is randomised into the study, they receive their first injection, and then day 39 they receive their last injection. So it's 2 injections a week for 6 weeks, and the injections are not into the joint. That's a common question. People don't want to have the drugs injected into the joint. They prefer it to be administered subcutaneously, so it's generally into the fatty layer around the abdomen. Small, very small amount of volume of drug, and a very fine gauge needle, almost painless. But people are becoming very familiar with subcutaneous injections. And then, interestingly, we have built in an interim analysis at day 112. At day 112, when 50% of the subjects have reached that follow-up period, we'll be doing an interim analysis. The Data Safety Monitoring Review Board will look at the data unblinded and then be able to determine the effect of the drug versus placebo. So that will give us a very clear indication as to the likely outcome of the trial. So that is a key value inflection point for all investors. And that will be in about 12 months' time. Now, I said that we have optimised the study. Our biometrics group have gone through all of our previous phase 2 studies, and they have decided that we would size the study based on the effect size of 0.3. And if we get an effect size of 0.3 in our study, we'll have an 86% power, relating roughly to 86% probability of success. If the effect size goes up to 0.4, we will have a greater than 98% chance of success with the trial. Now, we have had a phase 2 study that did have effect size greater than 0.4. That was our most recent phase 2 study. So we have a lot of confidence going into this study that we will be able to achieve statistical significance between the placebo and our drug. Now, again, a busy slide, but I'm not going to go through all the different details, but this is just to give investors an idea of some of the other ASX-listed phase 3 companies, and to show you that the indication that they have established, and as you can see down the very bottom is Paradigm. I would have to say osteoarthritis of the knee is by far the most prevalent of any of the disorders that are being studied by the other companies. Some of them are so rare that they get orphan drug status. But also on the right-hand side, you can see some of the numbers associated with the market capitalisation of the companies at the investigational new drug submission to the FDA. And then you can see their current market cap. So there is a significant uplift from where you start with your IND through to the current market cap. We think that Paradigm is significantly undervalued compared to our peers. So just touching on the investment highlights, we have multiple phase 2 clinical studies producing consistent and efficacious results over at least 3 studies, ranging from follow-up periods of 6 months out to 12 months. We've also seen very strong signals of regeneration of joint tissues on MRI and also through the biomarkers. We have real-world evidence of people who have been treated with the drug having significant improvement. We have used all of these data in our biometrics analysis to come up with an optimised phase 3 trial design. The FDA has agreed that this program is worthy of fast-track designation because this is a non-opioid based drug, and it also is a drug that offers the potential for improvement in the joint structure. So we have got FDA fast-track designation. There is a very large unmet global market for treatment of osteoarthritis, with many patients dissatisfied with their current treatments. And as I mentioned, near-term inflection points. So the middle of 2026, we expect to have 50% of the patients reaching the day 112 mark, and therefore we'll be able to do the interim analysis, and that will provide us with a very strong indication to the power of the study and the probability of success. Over the next 12 months, we'll have very significant news flow catalysts coming up. Soon we expect to be announcing first participant dosed in the United States. Towards the second half of this year, we expect to have 50% of the patients recruited into the trial. First half of 2026, we expect 100% recruitment of all subjects into the trial, and as I mentioned, mid-2026, probably July 2026, we'll have the results of our interim analysis made public. And some contact information there at the conclusion of the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie.
Super interesting. I hope you enjoyed that. I have got 4 quite detailed audience questions for you. So we'll start with this first one that's come in from Ray. He says, can you ask Paul Rennie? Yes, I can. What is involved in the various stages of medical trials in the US? Noting that Paradigm has done a second stage 2, he wants you to talk about the cost of stage 3 and other trials and registrations required, and importantly, the timing. There's a lot in that question. But
yes, there is. Thank you, Ray. That's a lot of information there. So, yes, I think I mentioned at the outset that each company going through registration with the US FDA will be required to undertake those 3 studies. So phase 1 being looking at a number of patients who are healthy, and you're looking at the safety of the drug in humans for the first time. Phase 2 is up to the sponsor how many phase 2s they do. You could do 1, you could do 3 like Paradigm, but the more phase 2s you do, the more likely you are of having a very clear understanding of how the drug works in a particular patient population, and then you optimise for phase 3. With a large indication such as osteoarthritis, most of the regulatory agencies around the world will require a second confirmatory study just to confirm the results of your first study. Different group of patients. Generally, if the drug effect size is very high, that confirmatory study will be a lot smaller than this 466 trial subject. So that's answering your question about what further studies are required. Often there are additional questions in the background that the agency may ask to be undertaken before you file your NDA, and we are currently working on those and have been working on those for a number of years to make sure that when we finish the confirmatory study, we have all of the data that's been asked for by the FDA in a position to be able to make a complete submission. The cost of this particular trial is in the millions of dollars. It will be in the region of around about 50 to 60 million Australian dollars to complete the phase 3 study. So that's the entire cost of the trial. And as I mentioned, we're confident that we have the funds available to get through to those major inflection points. And we believe if we reach the inflection point of the interim analysis, then we should see a significant interest from commercial companies wanting to take rights to that product and then finish off the registration and take the product into the market.
Okay. I might, if I can, I'm just going to skip to a question. Had you finished? I feel like I just interrupted you then.
No, that's fine, Kelly. I was just thinking in my mind, have I answered all of Ray's questions?
Well, there's a question here from Leanne which sort of moves on from just what you were saying. So given the 27 million US secured to provide that runway you were just talking about through many significant milestones, what's the projected cash burn over this period, and what are your financing plans beyond the interim analysis, particularly if the results are positive but full commercialisation requires substantial further investment?
Yes, thanks, Leanne. So that will be, yes, post the phase 3 trial, post the confirmatory study, with all of those associated studies in the background, we believe that we have sufficient cash to get us through to the interim analysis, but we will then have to, at the interim analysis, look for additional capital to finish off the phase 3 trial. Now that we expect will come from non-dilutive cash by way of a commercial transaction. Commercial companies have been following our progress for a number of years, and they understand that the interim analysis is a very significant de-risking event for investors and for their particular company, because if you can say, well, look, we're halfway through a phase 3 trial, this is what the first 50% of subjects are showing in terms of drug effect size, then it's likely you're going to see that same drug effect size with the full 100%. So it's a very significant barometer to the success of the phase 3 trial, and we think at that point commercial companies will want to put money into the company to try and secure the distribution rights for the product once registered.
Okay, that makes sense. This, you've sort of half answered this already. A question from Beth: how much risk is taken off the table for Paradigm if the analysis due in the middle of next year, so the interim stuff, is for 50% patient completion? Sorry, I'll just say that again. How much risk is taken off the table if that analysis due in the middle of next year is positive?
If it's positive, strongly positive, drug effect size greater than 0.35 to 0.4, we would say around about 98% probability of success. So we've taken a lot of the risk off the table. We can't guarantee that, obviously, but it will be around that figure. So I think it's not a binary outcome as such as a 50-50 bet. It's more like a 98% versus 2%.
Okay.
So it is a huge de-risking event
Yeah.
for the company.
All right. And last question from John. I'm not entirely sure if this is relevant to you, but is managing preclinicals problematic? And if so, is it getting harder or easier due to AI?
Oh, that's an interesting question, John. I'm not sure whether I can answer that entirely correctly, because I'm not entirely sure what the question is. If it's asking if AI has made preclinical testing easier, I'm not sure if that means...
Are you guys using AI?
Internally as a company, we have an AI policy, but we don't use AI at the moment to undertake a preclinical study. So generally, the idea behind a preclinical study is you're testing the drug in a live setting, but not humans. So therefore, you're testing it in animals, and once you get that data, then maybe you're putting that data into AI to see if you can then predict some likely outcome in humans. But sometimes that's a long sort of bow to draw, because you've got differences between animals and humans in terms of metabolism and systems and things like that. So I'm not entirely sure if AI will replace the preclinical program of clinical development, but certainly our preclinical development days are well behind us. We're now into the clinical phase 3, but when we first started, we did do some preclinical studies, and they were obviously all very effective, and we're about to publish a preclinical study we did in dogs with naturally occurring osteoarthritis with our drug, and we found very positive outcomes from that study. So I'm not sure how AI would interface with that, but maybe we could ask John to contact us and provide a little bit more detail of the question so that we can answer it a bit more thoroughly.
We can put you in touch. Perhaps it's one of the very few things that AI won't be disrupting. Yes. Anyway, Paul, thank you so much for coming into the studio. It's great to meet you.
Thank you, Kylie.
And for your presentation.
That's a pleasure. Thank you very much.